think if I track you there, that's one of the difficult things for people, because they're with their friends and they're not doing anything different from their friends, and they're getting sick, and the friends are okay.
Yeah, and we'll come to in a little bit of how we have these predisposing factors, but we still require triggers and things to cause ME or chronic fatigue to manifest. Before we come to that, also we refer to certain subtypes on nutrition, or the more physical side of it. So we talk about an immune subtype. This is where people, maybe right from being very young, they were more likely to catch colds and viruses, and they just seem to be getting sick a lot. So there's a weakness within the immune system.
Okay.
We also talk about a detox subtype. And this is where people just seem to, ongoingly through their life, have had issues around toxicity, being it they've been overly exposed to chemicals or organophosphates and those kind of things. And maybe they've got a lot more food intolerances, but you can kind of see that they have trouble with kind of detoxing, substances that other people maybe would be okay with. And then just the final of these 7 subtypes as we classify them, and different clinics have obviously different ways of doing that, is what we call the diet and lifestyle type. And this is where people, and it's something that's becoming obviously more and more prevalent in the Western world, is people that just don't look after themselves. Lots of drinking, smoking, partying, not resting, and living life in a way which is placing too many demands. Shift work is a great example of that. People which are up 5-6 nights a week working, and they're constantly pulling their body out of its natural balances and ways of being. So you have either one or a few or a collection of these predisposing factors, these subtypes which are there. But as you mentioned, lots of people in society can have those things going on without it necessarily manifesting as something like chronic fatigue, ME, that kind of group of illnesses. A couple of things about that. Firstly, it's obviously a lot of these ideas are kind of embryonic, and that they're based on clinical experience rather than kind of ongoing kind of scientific research. But we believe there's a genetic component which may well be going on. So why does one person have all of these predisposing factors and develop ME, and someone else develops maybe cancer or heart disease or something else? There's maybe a genetic component that's there. But in a high percentage of cases, there's normally a trigger event of something that happens that, with all of these predisposing factors weakening the system, something that happens that kind of pushes them in to some kind of burnout. That could be anything from a very stressful life event, like the loss of a job or loss of a loved one or a divorce or something like that, to being exposed to some kind of virus. Glandular fever is often one that many people have. There are also people which have what we call gradual onset, where it's the predisposing factors but so much out of balance over so much time that the body simply cannot keep going. I think a really helpful way to look at it is chronic fatigue, ME, whatever we kind of choose to call that really it's an example of the demands being placed upon the system being more than the system can handle for long enough that something kind of snaps.
Yeah, you see, the more you talk about it, the more I realise this is a lot of information.
Yeah.
And for somebody who doesn't know about health and just wants to live their life, especially a young person, this is quite daunting, that I've got to be aware of this. I've got to make sure that I don't overstress myself, doing this particular sport I want to do, or studying for examinations, and my social life's in balance. I don't have too much binge drinking, all the rest of it. And that's a lot for a young person to take on board.
And, as I was saying, it's where the demands placed upon the system for long enough that it's like a fuse goes or something kind of snaps in the system. And, to give you some statistics, for example, it's believed there are around 250,000 people in the UK which are affected with ME severe enough that it's been diagnosed. My sense is it's probably a lot higher than that. They're quite old statistics, and I think a lot of that is because people just aren't being diagnosed because doctors...
And most people are tired.
Most
people are saying, I get tired,
In fact, it's an interesting point, because if you think about it as being kind of a line where you've got at one end people that are just a bit more tired than maybe they used to be, and people which are severely kind of housebound or bedbound with ME as an illness, you see that as you say, most people don't have as much energy as they might have. But also most people live their lives in a way which is a lot of stresses on us, these days in the Western world. And it's very, the human body adjusts quite slowly genetically over time to become used to the environment we're in. And if we look at the changes in fact, even from the point that I got ME back in 95, or 96, that since then, mobile phones, the internet, that, you're out for a walk relaxing and your phone's ringing the whole time. It wasn't like that even 15, 20 years ago. So a lot has changed in our environment, and ME is an example of it being too much for people to handle. And a useful analogy that people have used is it's a bit like down in the mines. They would take a canary down, because a canary would get affected by kind of pollution and that kind of thing more quickly than anybody else would.
It was the gas.
The gas, right, exactly. The gas. So they were kind of the warning. One of the ways to look at it is maybe people with ME are like the canaries. They're kind of the warnings that the way that we're living for a lot of people is placing too many demands.
I read about this the other day. It's funny you should mention that. And I read what happened originally was the canary would go unconscious, but they didn't let the canary die. They would take the canary out. They would all leave straight away.
Yeah.
And so they'd catch it at the point even before the canary died. Now, that's intelligence.
That's not what generally happens
absolutely
in the Western world.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned before as well, what often happens is as people start to get ill, they often will continue to do the things which cause them to get ill in the first place. We've, as a clinic, treated well in excess of 2,000 people. So I've been responsible for seeing a lot of different ME cases. And you'd be amazed by the number of people that will say things like, I started to develop symptoms and I was really struggling to get through the day at work. And I thought that I was just unfit, or I thought I was just being lazy. So I went and joined the gym.
Which probably isn't a very good idea.
Well, it's statistically with ME, one of the things that's been found is early diagnosis is a strong indicator of a good prognosis going onwards, because it means we're stopped doing the things which are constantly weakening and damaging the system.
Yeah, but we also have to listen.
Yeah.
And we have to be willing to go along with the advice, which isn't always easy, because you get a bit down, and then you energy-wise, and then you kind of adjust things a little bit, and you feel a bit better, and you start really trying to race back to where you were. It's very hard, that mental discipline.
It is.